good evening, this is Hamburg's Tea, wishing you a very pleasant evening. And I'd like to read you a piece that I found the other day by Howard Kunstler, and it's a very interesting piece, and it's about basically abuse of law that is taking place right now south of the border, and it's the complicity and mendacity of the media to perpetrate some of these legal abuses. And so I feel that I have to preface this video by saying that just because this is about the Democrats and what the Democrats are doing, doesn't mean to say that I am a Republican or that I'm necessarily anti-Democrat. It's kind of sad that I actually do have to preface the video in this way to put it into some kind of context, but what we're talking about here basically is the rule of law. And one of the things that I had read in my 2020 predictions it's a very interesting little point about the demonstrations that are taking place, and that is that, well, what do you do after the demonstration? If there is no leadership to put into place some kind of alternative system, you can protest till you're blue in the face, but you're not going to achieve very much at all. And my point of saying that is that we're not going to resolve this, as bad as government is, by outright destroying those institutions. No matter where you are, no matter what you do, no matter what side of the community, whether it's a household size, municipality, county, provincially, federally, it doesn't matter. We were always going to have to come back to some kind of a rule-based system and some kind of hierarchical management system. I just really don't see any way around that, and you can see that in any of the situations, you take a small group of people, even 20 to 40 people, and you put them in isolation somewhere, and I will guarantee you that what will happen is that somebody will take on a leadership role, because there's always somebody who wants to take on that leadership role, and there'll be people who are strong in their own suits, but they will form subgroups, and there will be some kind of council, a decision-making council. Maybe the leaders of each group will get together and make decisions. Now there will be a lot more discussion and a lot more communication, and it will be a lot more egalitarian, but my point again is that we tend to drift towards these kinds of structures because they do work. So even if you destroy everything, even if you get rid of all of the problems that so-called the white supremacy and the far right and the far left and all of the different many genders in this confusing world that we're living in now as far as sexuality is concerned, even if you got away from all of that, if you resolved all of those issues, we would still have to have some kind of rule-based system that we all agree to. Because we can immediately see that if we're playing any kind of game, if there's no rules, well, how is the game going to work? And I mean, I'm assuming that we are agreeing beforehand that we want, the object is that we want to play a game, that we want to cooperate, that we want to live together, that we like the things that are around us. The buildings that we live in, the hydro coming out of the wall, iPhones, computers, internet, all of this kind of stuff, all of this structure. If you need to keep this in place, you need an underlying rule-based structure that we can all agree upon and we're all going to abide by. We're going to live by that code. Now, I'm not saying that those rules in that structure can't be changed. Of course they should be changed, and they should be able to be changed a lot more easily than they are in today's system. However, once we've agreed on those changes, we're all agreeing that we're going to follow those rules together. And so when I see abuses of the law, flagrant abuses of the law, I'm going to speak out about it, because it's important that we don't lose this foundation, or the foundations of our civilization, because that really was a separating point in our civilization when we became a civilized society, was when you had fair representation before the law, when there was a legal system that you couldn't be just strung up from the nearest tree because a bunch of people said that you were guilty of one crime or another, No, you actually had to be able to face your accuser, and they had to prove that you had done something wrong. And out of that system, we have flourished. That is where we really got equality before the law. And even now, we've fallen off the rails. I'm not going to, beat around the bush. That's exactly what's happened. I mean, if you want to get involved in a class action suit today, you better have $1 million in your back pocket. And you better hope and pray that you're never accused. Because even if you are accused, you will end up spending that money just defending your good name. Now, that is not equality before the law, and that is not a fair judicial system. Okay, I'll be the first to agree that. But with reform, and I have been involved in the legal system, and I have run for council, and I've read a lot of these tedious and boring articles and documents and legal decisions. And as long and as boring as it is, they're actually not bad. If they're enacted properly, they're written that way to cover every base. But by and large, the intent of the legal system is a good, fair and balanced intent. Where the problem is in the interpretation, and where we strayed from the intended interpretation and spirit of our legal system. Okay, so when I read a letter like this, which seems very pro-Republican and very anti-democratic, I'm doing it because it highlights what's happened legally. And I can assure you that if anybody wants to abandon some kind of legal system where you have equality before the law, it will not be too long, I can assure you, before that decision is going to come back and haunt you, and you're going to lose your freedom of speech when you have a complaint about what is going on. And that is why we get this saying that I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. That's the important issue. This is the important takeaway issue here from this video and from this letter, and it just highlights the kind of ridiculous abuses that are taking place today, and the way the media is completely complicit and supporting these abuses. Okay, so let's go over this letter. It's not too long, but I'm going to do a very, very quick wrap up, and here we go. From Zero Hedge, Civil War 2.0 manufactured by media's mendacious retailing of obvious falsehoods. And this is authored by James Howard Kunstler via Kunstler.com. In that mercifully quiet week between Christmas and New Year's, I rewatched Ken Burns' documentary of the First Civil War in contemplation of a possible second. What an almighty bloodbath that was. Thousands butchered in minutes in one battle after another, heads and limbs flying, men turned inside out and horses too. The blue and grey were hostage to their battlefield tactics and didn't seem to learn from the insane extravagance of souls wasted in massed assaults against massed artillery again and again and again. The population of the whole nation, Confederacy included, was 31 million in 1860, and the war killed 2% of that, almost entirely young men. And of course that's another big point here, that when we have a war, it's always the young that pay the price. Another impression left by that documentary was the startling beauty of the countryside in that day, and of the little towns that dotted the landscape where all the carnage and horror played out. Not a strip mile in the whole gorgeous panorama. The rolling fields neatly fenced in the stillness of a summer's day. A peaceful tranquility we today cannot even imagine. Everything human scaled and so many buildings graced with beauty deliberately made. Pediments, steeples, cupolas, columns and swags. Walt Disney could have not imagined a more tender and appealing place. The lyrical names of those towns are linked to the rivers of blood: Shiloh, Spotsylvania, Missionary Ridge, Cold Harbor. And the last impression accumulated over each installment was this: we did it to ourselves. We couldn't seem to stop. Just as today, various parties to the current events cannot seem to stop their provocations to a new episode of national domestic violence. This time it is the very government at war with itself, and so far the war is merely legalistic. The battles of lawyers, of which one senses we have far too many for our own good. The Department of Justice in particular is at war with itself. one faction in it refusing to cooperate with the other, hiding documents, trafficking in political muck, plugging up the works with deceptions, and still at it in the yet unresolved case of General Flynn, which should have been thrown out of the court months ago based on obvious prosecutorial malice. Likewise, the New York Times, NBC News and many other companies can't seem to give up on their mendacious retailing of obvious falsehoods in league with rogue government agencies. Their readers and followers learned nothing from the stunning failure of Robert Mueller's long investigation to find any crimes, and most don't even understand that the purpose of it was to simply antagonize the president while trying desperately to come up with ammunition against him for the next election. Using all the resources of federal machinery, in other words, it was just a government-sponsored elaboration of the opposite research conjured up by Hillary Clinton's fusion GPS hirelings in 2016. The bigger picture of all the chicanery is right out there to see for anyone really paying attention. Mr. Obama and Hillary hijacked the most pernicious instruments of government, the CIA and FBI, to win the election, and then to overthrow the actual winner. Slowly, they were found out. Despite all the smoke they were blowing around and hiding in, Barr and Durham have hardly said a thing about their efforts to unwind the massive hairball of subterfuge and arse-covering that is their purview. Yet the particulars of what went on and who did what are now pinned to the wall. We know exactly what Christopher Steele was and how that all worked. We know how John Brennan played it and how James Clapper and Jim Comey went along with it and took it further and deeper, and where Rod Rosenstein and Andrew McCabe stepped in, and exactly how Mr. Mueller got roped in to front his operation, despite his mental incapacity. And we also know that Barack Obama approved all of that activity through 2016 into January 20th, 2017. When it comes into the courts some months from now, Brennan, Comey and the rest will surely cop a plea that they were following Mr. Obama's presidential instructions. The impeachment hysteria is an exact index of the rising fear of that coming finger-pointing. Mr. Obama has been drawn into the heart of this matter. His reputation will be destroyed, and with it the progressive agenda that he represented for 2 terms, and which still holds his party hostage as much as the battlefield tactics of 1864 held the armies of the North and South hostage. We've heard very little from Mr. Obama in recent months, and only a few squawks out of Hillary. The lawfare shock troops are working feverishly in the background to invent new congressional chicanes to trap Mr. Trump, but their legal cleverness can't overcome the weakness of their cause. And just as the soldiering of Robert E. Lee and his generals could not overcome the tragic wrongfulness of fighting for slavery, a century and a half from now people in this land, whatever it is called by them, will say that a coup against Mr. Trump was a valiant endeavour, just as people today will say that the Civil War of 1861 to 1865 was about some metaphysical truth above and beyond slavery. Hillary is still on the loose, and she still has many partisans in the ranks of government, and they are scheming desperately now to save their skins. I don't believe that Mr. Obama actually commands any troops in this fight. He remains the mere symbol that he was from the very start, when the Democratic Party hoisted him out of obscurity as the grand prize for post-war liberalism. After the election, I think Mr. Trump was prepared to drop his wish to lock her up, but he has had 3 years to discover just how much malice was arrayed against him, and now he's going to run it aground. Well, I hope you found that interesting, and if you did, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.